Okay. Yeah. Let's fucking go. Theory Night in Canada. We're back.
Yep. Definitely recording a week since our last episode.
Yeah, this totally isn't later in the day because our last episode got delayed by moving, technical issues, vacations, just everything that could be.
Well, we actually got our first meme ever produced.
Oh yeah,
in
thanks
Canada
to the Filipino fan that gave us a meme about Shrey.
from New York.
Yeah.
He was just hating unnecessarily against me, but it's okay.
I must say that learning that someone who I don't know is actually listening to our podcast is actually a huge jump in my brain. That shit is crazy.
Oh, no, it feels amazing, isn't it? Even if they're
Yeah.
hating on us, it feels amazing.
Yeah.
Listen, this guy's not a hater. We've established he's a fan. He made fan art.
Look, what's the
That is
difference? No, we need to make a subreddit to get banned. At some point.
I think that would get us some press if we got a subreddit banned.
It would. Maybe we have to start actually doing social media presence. Do I have to get back on social media after I just spent 3 months quitting? That'd be cool.
There are some Reddit things I want to do, which will come up eventually. But
When
we're
you say
still figuring
Reddit
all that
things,
out.
do you mean Reddit core things, or do you mean things
He wants
just
to hit
on
up
the
the, he wants to hit up the
platform
barcade later.
Reddit?
We'll have
He
we'll
wants
live
to go
stream
to
a chess
atheist
game.
church.
We'll live stream a chess game in the middle of an atheist church and bring in haters. It'll work.
Honestly, maybe I will start setting up social media presence. And maybe at some point I'll start chopping this shit and putting it in shorts or something to see if we can actually drive a little bit more engagement
Listen,
out there.
I've been saying since day one we need to shorts max. Just spam the YouTube Shorts tab with clips of us talking.
Yeah,
You know,
but
go ahead.
you go,
Yeah.
Shrey.
No, you go ahead.
I feel like shorts, if you're doing anything on YouTube, shorts are inevitable. But I feel like based on our podcast from last week, not earlier today, that finally actually kind of reached a quality point where I was comfortable with myself. So it might be a time for me to start making up a few shorts to get the word out on the streets.
Okay, so you guys make actual shorts. I wanted to see if I could use some of those online AI models to summarize our podcast and make AI generated videos for them and see what happens and make those shorts.
So
That's
putting
that's literally more effort than just making shorts.
okay.
No, but that's scalable. I can do that once and it'll work for every.
If we just
single
have
podcast.
our voice talking, put some of that you guys know the music I'm talking about. Put some of that epic music in the background and then just have a bunch of AI generated images about what we're talking about. That would actually go obscenely hard. And we know a couple guys who are good at making those kinds of videos in 4 minutes.
That is true.
Oh yeah, we know guys who listen, we know some funk producers. Let's put it at that.
Signed by Universal.
Listen, let's not put our man on blast, all right?
Look,
we're getting too specific. We're doxing him now.
Yeah.
Actually, his name, postal
Especially-
code.
He is blowing up, isn't he? So
He is, yeah. He's more famous than us by a long shot already.
Oh, yeah, at least 20 subscribers. So
No, this guy has a. Oh, okay, I can't get way too specific.
Yeah, let's actually
I'm just
stop
gonna-
talking about this before we dox.
I'm gonna start doxing. All right,
yeah, Ben,
so
you gotta just post a one frame picture of him in the middle of this.
No, I'm not doing that.
So first up on our list, everybody, we have 4 items that are called the exact same thing. And up first is the fires.
Yeah.
So I think who was doing the fires in Northwest Territories, unless it was me?
I thought it was you.
Ah, shit, that rocks. Okay, well, I got 2 buried into the Niger Coup. But
Whoa,
essentially,
what are those?
That's true. That's true. Northwest Territories has been more or less completely decimated by wildfires. According to a couple headlines that I have, I guess, now forgotten to read, it was like 90% of it is just like going up. There's 240 something fires. Almost all of its like major population centers just getting abandoned. Not that there's many up there.
I mean, Yellowknife has been completely evacuated.
Yeah,
Yes.
and the fact that we have that's capital city, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Been a minute. The fact that one of our capital cities has effectively just a population of 0 right now is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
so
right
over
off the bat.
20,000 people have been evacuated from Yellowknife, which is, like Bennett said, the entire city has been evacuated. They're all going to Calgary, Edmonton, or around Alberta, which is insane. Like, that is, as I was saying, a capital city just evacuated. To be specific, there are 200 fires, or about 237 fires in the Northwest Territories right now.
Holy God. So yeah, there's a ton of people that are like going to Calgary and such. So the real leaders for climate change are starting to reap some of the reality of climate change, which is just refugee crises that will start to become more and more common as time goes on. But also just logistically, there's a bunch of shit that happens when you evacuate a city like this, or at least like a population center, which is they have hospitals, right?
Yep, they do.
How do you just evacuate that? Now, I guess we know that, yeah, you can do like flights to get people out of there. And I do know that there was some controversial news about Air Canada saying that, oh, wait, we actually aren't going to be price gouging. We're no longer raising our prices after prices like tripled. So another one of those things where it's like they did the profiteering, and similar to Dougie saying, oh, we won't undo what we've already done, but we totally won't do any more, bro. Yeah, they raised their prices and then said they're not going to raise their prices anymore. It does seem particularly interesting that everyone's like, I think I saw this came from a YouTube comment. Someone saying, oh, prices shouldn't go up when a place is evacuated. And the reply was, actually, prices should go up. This is basic supply and demand. Which is just your most sane supply and demand head, and I have no idea what this guy thinks of when he turns on his computer and looks at software.
Yeah. Listen, we'll get into that. Don't blow up the spot just yet, as it were.
Nah, that shit just goes too hard. I have to at least reference it. But yeah, essentially Canada is even more LeBurning than before. I remember we had our big first round of fire season covering Nova Scotia and kind of that eastern area, with smoke blowing over New York, Toronto, Ottawa, just everywhere, to the point where people had to stay indoors. And then it kind of, fires were still happening, but it wasn't quite as wild for a little bit. A little bit of a lull in the action, so to say. Which means a return to a high fire season in most other years. But now we're back in the extreme fire zone. Fire season has returned with a vengeance. And I know it was probably a month and a half ago now. We had already surpassed the most amount of fires and area burned in recorded Canadian history, as far as I know. And it's been a long time since we hit that milestone, and it's still going in a big way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you can say. Like, it's just not. It's not going well.
Yeah, it ain't going well. And I've been saying it for a little bit. I really feel like 2023 is going to be a particularly notable year in the history of climate change. We have a lot of major milestones being surpassed by absolutely monstrous amounts. Like certain things are going from, oh, it went up 5%, 5%, 5%. Now we're up 50% in 1 year.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. The jumps
Now-
are getting big.
Here's some interesting numbers. So I was in Northwest Territories last year for my birthday, and Yellowknife is small. Like it's a very 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 small city, right? City is very generous. It is about 20,000 people there. Out of the 44,000 that live in Northwest Territories, approximately 30,000 have been ordered to evacuate. So it's about 60-70% of the population has been ordered to leave the territory. And the closest major city is Edmonton for people to evacuate to. So that's 14 hours away by car. To be relative, to make it easy to
from
compare.
Yellowknife
Yep.
to Edmonton? That's crazy.
Yep, you can.
I think
So it's
there's a
14 and a half
road.
hours. There is one road, and the fire is near that road, which is a whole other question. But to make it to understand it, Toronto to Atlanta is less time to drive than Yellowknife to Edmonton.
Jeez.
So it is really far
Yeah, that's
to
crazy.
go to be evacuated. But they've got like no choice, right? And
Luckily-
then there's entire flight thing what happened.
Yeah, luckily plane tickets are cheap. But yeah, this is literally like there's just entire cities / towns worth of culture that is just vanishing in front of our eyes right now. You said
This doesn't
like
even include Kelowna.
you
I'm
said
not sure if you're
2/3 of
following
the
me.
population of the entire territory.
Yep, about 2/3 have been ordered to
Yeah.
evacuate.
That is nightmarish numbers, and that territory is effectively country-sized for a lot of places.
The Northwest
Yeah.
Territories is literally like half the size of fucking Western Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah,
is
no, it's insane.
the scale of this is absolutely brutal. And like Nova Scotia, there were a ton of big fires, but Nova Scotia, is still a small place, and the fires are still small within that. This is probably fires in a scale beyond what I can imagine.
Yeah, this is like a
And this isn't
subcontinent-sized fire.
Yeah.
And this isn't the only fire, right? There's the entire Kelowna fire happening at this exact moment as well, which is threatening to tens of thousands of other people are being ordered to evacuate. I think a total of so far in this year alone, about 168,000 people have been forced to evacuate somewhere in Canada.
Yeah.
Which is a huge amount, right? That's a good size. That's bigger than Kingston being forced to evacuate.
Yeah.
And as big fans of business ontology and business mindset, as market worlders ourselves, such a large movement and such a large damaging to human life comes with large capital costs as well. Shrey, you did a bit of a deep dive into the insurance behind some of these fires in previous years, and what did you find?
So I don't know about. So it's not going to be specific to fire. It's going to be all of natural disasters in general. But just to give some context, so every year with natural disasters, there's obviously a lot of insurance payouts that need to be done in order to help protect these people or give back to these people who've lost their housing, property, whatever. And that's also going to be a question for the future because it's getting so expensive to insure these properties that some insurance companies, not in Canada yet, but in the States and other places around the world, have stopped offering protection for some of these things, which is a whole other bag of worms. The Tantalon fires, which happened about 2 months ago in Nova Scotia, the Spencer
Tantalon?
keeps linking to, Tantalon fires, what costed about $165 million to insure. The
insurance payouts, right?
in insurance payouts, yeah. So in the insurance payments for natural disasters has been recorded since 1983. So this is the 40th year of recording these numbers. The top 3 years were 2016, 2013, 2022, and in the last 5 years have all been recorded as a within the top 10 for highest insurance payouts. So the trend is clearly going up.
Look, all we
With
do
each
is win,
year.
baby, no matter what.
Canada
Got
number
money
one.
on my mind.
Before
This
2008,
kind of reminds me of the whole. Do you remember that one Ben Shapiro take where it's like, oh, if climate change is going to start ruining your house, sell your house and go and buy
To
one
who?
somewhere else?
To whom?
Yeah. This is one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, you're going to have to move. Sell your house. No one's going to move there. It can't get insured on anything. And there's most likely going to be fires coming again in the future.
Fires, floods, hurricanes.
Yeah.
Last year was the derechos. I'm not sure if you remember how do you remember those, but that's like the high windstorms, which are destroyed like a lot of Ontario and Quebec.
Yeah.
Before 2008, an average of 500 million was spent on weather-related losses. Currently, it's over 2 billion per year. With this year being 3.2, with this year being about 3.2 billion.
Look, I'm telling you, it's only up 20%.
Well, I am using inflation-adjusted numbers. So This is with inflation. But,
Wait,
I mean,
so
of course,
could be the same.
There is population growth, but that doesn't account for such a massive increase. Obviously, more has happened. And what's really unique about 2022, which is the most recent full year statistic, of course, is that the two biggest years were 2013 and 2020 and 2016. So in 2013, 75% of the or not 75%, sorry, out of the 3.8 billion spent on insurance payouts, 3.2 billion came from just two events: the Calgary floods and then the Toronto floods. Mm-hmm. And then another 200 million came as well from the ice storm. Mm-hmm. In 2016, 6 billion was paid out. So this was the highest and worst year. 75% of that 2 billion came from one event, which was the Alberta fires.
Yep.
Last year in 2022 was the first year where no one event was more than 33% of all payouts. It was just so many events happening all across the country that it was just too much, and it was just all over. So it couldn't be attributed to one weird event happening.
Just a general increase in velocity of disasters.
Yeah.
Yep. Here's a quote I have. In particular, we're seeing early signs that property insurance may become less affordable or even unavailable as global reinsurers shift capacity away from riskier countries. And so that's the first signs that they're getting away from insuring Canadians altogether.
And the best part about this is the only people that can't deal with this are the people who don't have enough money and are generally fairly restricted spatially. They're unable to afford just moving and buying more properties. We know they can't sell their properties, so they're losing all of the accumulated capital they've gained in their life. The wealthy people can just buy up another place somewhere that is more likely to be fine.
Yep.
But it's only the poor people and the non-owners of the world, workers, renters, people like that will just get ditched.
Oh yeah, most likely speaking, if you're rich, you're not living in Northwest Territories.
Yeah, it's not a rich place.
Yeah.
And so it is
probably seething, but I don't know all the most about Northwest Territories.
It is an economically depressed place, at least for my visit there.
At least from his groundwork. Shrey was there actively depressing their economy.
I was economically doing it.
Yeah. Well, thinking about the good and the bad of the economy, we'll go from one of the places that is generally not one of the money hotspots to possibly one of the bigger money hotspots in terms of Canada. Our big oil friends out west. Okay, so this is in our third section called the fires, and essentially what's happened is one of the biggest energy producers in the world. You said it was Suncor?
Yep.
All right, good. I misspelled that in my notes somehow. They're pulling out of renewables. So in a previous episode, we covered Danielle Smith and how she put a freeze on all development projects for renewables for 7 months. And it appears the response from people around that, mainly all the energy producers, is, you know what, man? Screw these renewables. We're just going to move back into oil and fossil fuels.
I just want to clarify something. They actually pulled out of renewables last year.
That was last year?
Yeah, they've been out of renewables now.
Oh, hell yeah. Even better. So one thing that I mentioned is that the fact that people are creating more oil developments. So, I'm calling back multiple episodes now. We did an
Yeah.
episode covering pipeline development, and I said you only get this further pipeline development if fossil capital feels like they will, like if they feel confident that they will be able to reap profits for years to come through oil development and more pipelines. Because pipelines are incredibly expensive up front. It takes many years to pay them off. So they felt confident. Then Danielle Smith came up, and she then paused all development for renewables. So this does two things. One, give a good route into fossil development, and the other is make it so that renewables are now in a shakier state than they were before. It's a volatile investment that may get cut off, which is not good for, like, capital moves amorally generally.
Yeah.
It just goes to make more capital. Make one thing appealing, make another thing unappealing. What are you going to get? More investment into the appealing thing. So this is them saying, oh, okay, the thing that's unappealing just isn't even worth our time anymore. Unfortunately, the thing that is appealing, as is tradition, is the big bad thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to be getting more fossil development, I imagine. We're at least going to be getting less green development. And I'm wondering, though, if our glorious dictator will step in and try to make sure that renewable development keeps on happening. Because he does bear at least some control over this decision.
Yeah, I mean, knowing Trudeau, he'll probably try to go for some sort of market solution, which, like, there's no real, as you pointed out, there isn't a market solution that a neoliberal country has the capacity to even attempt.
Yeah.
Like, they can't be like, no, we're putting a 200% tax on oil or whatever, and like.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what carbon taxes are supposed to be, right? Theoretically.
But they aren't, are they?
A lot of them are just passed on to the consumer.
Yeah.
You are right.
Yeah.
But I do like now. I know I have a stance of being pro pipeline in general when it comes to these things because I have a different way in how I think of Canadian energy. But I do find it fascinating that Suncor's new CEO, Mr. Rich Kruger, which by the way is a fantastic name for a CEO, just Rich Kruger. But I do enjoy his comment coming out saying that we think that Suncor needs to stop dealing with this energy transition thing and focus more on the basics oil sands.
That's awesome. Yeah, that extremely complicated renewable energy as opposed to the extremely simple fracking. That's unreal. Also,
And that was like last week.
the sheer amount of complications that go into any oil development through, like, protests, concerns about people blowing up pipelines moving forward.
Well,
And
even
just
beyond that,
the sheer scale.
beyond that, like, oil companies have to spend like 1 billion years consulting the local government, the provincial government, indigenous groups who have a claim to the area. Not even indigenous groups that live there, but indigenous groups with claims to the area. It costs so much to fucking build a pipeline and or like build a tar pit or something. It's like I guess the margins must be great though. And that's that's all that really matters.
Well, the margins are fantastic, and what Rich Kruger was really focusing on was that in order to help the shareholders, and he did say this at a shareholders meeting, so it was directly targeted towards shareholders and nobody else. That
no other stakeholders were invited.
Well, this is the exact line. He believes the company has been too focused in recent years on energy transition and must get back to an oil-centered business strategy.
That's wild.
But like, it's just saying. I mean, this is something that we've all believed it. We all realize. I'm just happy that he's not following the ESG kind of bullcrap of pretending that they care about something else.
Yeah, that's true. This is the is it Clarence Thomas, or is this this is the Clarence Thomas idea, where it's just like, you know what, I might be evil, but at least I'm honest about that shit. I don't want equality.
Yeah.
I'm fine with inequality as long as I'm on top.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, and other hosts who might not know, who's Clarence Thomas?
Clarence Thomas is one of the Supreme Court judges in the United States. We could do
Sorry, I did not mean to bring up the United States. Execute me instantly.
Clarence Thomas
might be down.
Despite being an American, Clarence Thomas is actually a very interesting character that is worthy of exploring in great detail. If we ever do a deep dive into wacko progressives who became conservative.
Yeah.
He started out as kind of a socialist black nationalist, and over time became more of a radically right-wing black nationalist who's allied to Republican white people. It's a complicated scenario for him.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure if you guys have noticed this, but over the times, the oil companies have come out to becoming more and more energy companies. And for a long time, I was quite happy with that. And they're becoming energy companies. They're focusing on the renewables. They realize the oil is going to die, so they're going to diversify. But there has been now a trend going back to just being oil companies.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating, especially given all the political and the societal fears of all these wildfires and climate change.
I mean, I guess it kind of speaks to how little true rallying there is against them, and just how little power for change making average people actually have. They're gonna go back into oil, and according to the institutions as we've set them up, we really have no recourse. There's nothing to do unless you're going to take at least the title of how to blow up a pipeline literally. There's really no good ways to go around this.
No, I mean, people say that you can boycott oil and all that, but as a consumer, so much of our life is around oil without us knowing. All the supply chains are oil based, to be honest, and the plastics and everything is very, very oil based. You can't really boycott them. It won't make a difference.
Yeah. Also, even if we did transfer to renewables, we would still need oil. This, an indelible part of modern civilization. Not just for, not for fuel, but just for hydrocarbon production, plastics.
Yeah.
Although,
but I guess the argument is it would have to be significantly less, which would help with everything.
Although you did say something interesting, Spencer, where it's it doesn't matter what we want or we the people want.
Mm-hmm.
Is there really public? What is the public polling on oil in Canada? I've never looked into this.
I do have something in the next section titled "The Fires."
Yeah.
I do actually have a little bit of should we use this as a transition?
Sure, go ahead.
I thought that's what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. Bennett just handed me a red carpet and I tripped. Okay, so in a recent study, roughly 78% of Canadians aged 16 to 25 reported that climate change affects their overall mental health, and at least 56% said that they feel completely powerless, sad, and afraid.
But what's the support for oil though? Because people might disconnect that mentally from oil.
I don't think many do. Now, this is very specific numbers. Shrey might have to look up some polling while we go.
Yep, I got some numbers.
All right.
I'm just trying to figure out where you keep going. I'm just trying to figure out some things about this poll before I say it.
So essentially, this is an article talking about climate therapy, and as someone who is generally progressive, but also strangely almost anti-therapy. This is something that I decided to kind of pick up on, and I figured the article was it was actually pretty good, and I guess I need to explain that right off the bat because that is a wild statement. There is an argument for therapy where it is if there are different ways of being depressed. One is your life is shitty. Yeah. Things are actually going poorly. I don't know, something bad has happened recently. Maybe someone's died, or you're stressing. You're in between jobs. You don't have income going, or something like that. That is a reasonable depression to have. If you're in that situation, you're fine to feel sad. That's a normal
Yeah.
human response to the conditions you live under.
Not all abnormal emotions are disordered. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's like, oh, your life is going well, things are overall going pretty fine, except you stubbed your toe, and the first thing your brain thought is, I should just end it all now.
Yeah.
That is probably an issue, and that is something where, like, therapy, drugs, something like that could be useful. But what we seem to have right now is this whole culture of, oh, you're generally feeling sad and disenfranchised, let's go to therapy to make you feel normal, and it seems like therapy isn't necessarily being used as a tool for help, but a tool to like make people cope with bad conditions that they're living under. And this is nothing against therapists or people going to therapy. Like, you want to be happier, that is good. Therapist is one of the more honorable jobs in this time where people are really going through it. But the way the structure is set up makes it so that there is no going after the root cause of the issue. You can only try to force yourself to cope with it and then continue moving on. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, it's really like interesting. I mean, I didn't study psychology. I can't really claim to have an informed opinion on it. Nor did I ever nor have I ever really been deep in the weeds of the psychology industry. But it's like, it's hard to say because the brain is like the organ we understand by far the least. It's so complicated, right? Like there's definitely a rational sadness many people feel, or a rational anxiety many people feel, depending on circumstances. And like, I think for Western young people, climate change is a major source of sadness and anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. And it's definitely like, if it doesn't cause depression and anxiety disorders, certainly doesn't make them any better, you know? But there's also like, you know, the idea that it's caused by chemical imbalances, that there are people who are genetically predisposed to that behavior no matter circumstances. And like, I could see it being either or both, you know? I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say we should abolish therapy or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a very useful tool, but like many things, I guess my argument would just be that this tool might be getting a little overprescribed.
Yeah.
When having a different toolkit might be a better diagnosis for what's really going wrong. So yeah, this article kind of goes into that, and it says that a lot of people are, I would say rightly, feeling very disenfranchised and depressed based on climate change and how that's all going. And one thing it specifically said that I caught onto is it said there's an experience of feeling almost homesick for our planet or our environment while we still exist within it. It's a feeling of loss that manifests as a grief or an anxiety and can affect depression.
Like the idea that we're going to lose the natural world we currently have and never get it back.
Or is it the idea that we used to have the natural world, and we never got to experience it truly?
Probably a bit of both.
I guess it could be interpreted as a little bit of both. There's something that is our natural way, and we still exist in that world, but we're not at home within it. And the way they said it manifests as like a grief or anxiety, if I'm going to pop off a little bit, it kind of reminds me of the whole Psychopolitics by Byung-Chul Han. And in Burnout Society as well by him, where he says that we're going from like a negative state apparatus that works on kind of like an immunization thing, where there is an outside force of some sort. Maybe it would be, let's say we attribute it to climate change. The immediate idea would be, oh, okay, we need to purge that, as in a virus in the terms of immunology. And then we would get rid of it and continue on. That's the negative apparatus. But now that's kind of made way and become the platform for kind of a positive reinforcement apparatus, where the negative apparatus is like you feel sick is the consequence. The positive state apparatus, you don't feel sick, you can't just cure it. It's like an anxiety or like Yeah, it's just a widening anxiety, depression, or things like ADHD are the way that it presents itself for being overly positive. And I say this now because I'm going to bring it up a lot more later.
Okay.
So there's a lot about how like farmers used to at least have a consistent crop, and it wasn't awesome, but they would generally have long family histories of being farmers and, you know, making food for people. That's a real and honorable job. And now crops are becoming more inconsistent. There's constant anxiety. There's more droughts and there are more floods. The survival of crops is not guaranteed, and they feel like they're being pushed out of this. And it's something that I've become very interested in, is the idea that we've made way to having no roles for people.
Now,
Like
anecdotally speaking, that early thing you just said about how like those consistent farmers,
Yeah.
that was also really, really bad for the farmers. Like that, like a lot of farmers ended up losing their land because by keeping the same crop there, it ended up destroying the soil.
Yeah.
And we didn't really realize that until way later. That's what led to a huge migration of farmers to go from the farms to the cities.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
guess my
there's
point is I think you're romanticizing it a bit.
I would say actually he isn't. I think you're overblowing the soil depletion aspect of why farms declined. Like, definitely it was a part of it, the soil erosion. But, I mean, crop rotation has been known to European farmers and, like, I guess Afro-Eurasian farmers for, like, like thousands of years. Right? It's not like I mean, sure, there's like you had like the Dust Bowl and shit, but that all happened.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about.
In the background of like normal farming practice that had been going on, plus some sort of extreme climate event. Like the Dust Bowl happened in the context of like the great heat waves of the 1930s.
Yeah. Okay, I'm thinking of the Dust Bowl specifically.
But like immiseration of farmers is like soil erosion is not part of it, but like. Yeah. The proletarianization of farmers is like a thing that capital actively desires, like something that it actively works towards and tries to accomplish. There's like, I would say farming, like I say with many things, farming didn't necessarily die; it was murdered. Maybe less to a lesser extent than many other things, but yeah, the. Like subsumation of independent farmers into big businesses like Agripur.
Yes.
Yeah, like independent farming is just no longer economically viable, and one of the reasons is because these big monopoly producers have like made it a very hostile market. And that's
100%.
And it's also kind of like why I'm kind of down with the milk cartel in Canada. Which is like independent, like a I guess a guild. Yeah. It's not like a union because a union is for like proletariat. A guild of like dairy producers who have specifically banded together to keep dairy farming viable for independent producers.
No, that is true. I highly recommend. One of my favorite articles ever written in any news piece is this article in this like quarterly magazine that's found in Canada. It's called "We Bought the Farm," and it's We Sold the Farm. Sorry, and it's this incredible article about how it used to be that farmers were all independent people who kind of worked in a community.
Yeah,
and they would all support each other. It was a very commonly thing seen in like 1930s, 40s, 50s, and before, where farmers considered themselves part of the community. Which is why, if you look at voting patterns, they always voted socially conservative, but they were also very, very leftist in the way they thought, and the way they worked with each other, and the way they involved themselves in the economy.
Yeah, well then, a great example is like the farm auctions of the Great Depression.
Yes.
Yeah. Where I don't know if you know this story, Spencer, but do you know about like the farm auction thing?
I think I generally do, but we should tell the story anyways.
All right. Well, we'll tell it for the folks at home. But the farm auction thing was in the 30s when farms were getting foreclosed due to the Great Depression. Banks would auction off the farm to other local producers, and the community would show up and keep the bidding extremely low, and then like physically attack anyone who tried to bid above it. Like if someone from out of town came in, tried to buy this guy's farm, they just beat the shit out of him, right? And then after the auction, they would pool their money to buy the farm for whatever tiny price that they had bought it for, and then just give it back to its previous owners.
Oh, and many such examples. There's the farm auctions. There's the United Farmer Parties, which went through Canada, where basically these parties dedicated to just farmers and bringing in leftist communal ideas who were run by farmers, whereas a huge part of the country. There was the all these cooperatives and farmer banks, which helped lead to the rise of credit unions, which is still a big thing in many rural areas. Yeah. But that all lost in the 80s and 90s, where farmers, due to various factors, started seeing themselves less as independent members of a community to seeing themselves as small business owners who owned land and owned businesses.
Speaking of people who see themselves as individuals and not part of the community, who own land and that is their defining personality trait, Spencer, I think you wanted to talk about Vancouver NIMBYs.
Oh, I'm still like a third of the way through this article. Don't worry. We've just kind of been snapping.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's good. So yeah, a climate change panel essentially said that I wrote this down because it's relevant. Fires are predicted to get worse by about 60 to 65% year over year, which if this year is an indicator, we're about to get fucked.
60%, like exponential growth, like a 1.6 multiplier every year.
That was what I read this as. I'm not sure if the author made a mistake in writing this, which could be the case, and left it accidentally a little bit vague. But yeah, like I said, anxiety, massive anxiety is a very normal response to that figure.
Yeah.
People will have like a depressive paralysis, and yeah, it's just absolutely insane. She also mentioned how like people are like really distressed by the fact that even if they try to bike to work, they'll like go into coughing fits halfway through their bike ride because frequently the weather forecast just says smoke.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like how Google has like a cute little I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but if you Google the weather on your phone, you'll get like a cute little weather frog. And he'll be like, I don't know, frolicking through a field if it's sunny or something, or like huddling under an umbrella, smiling at the rain or whatever. They had one where when the wildfires started, the prognosis was just smoke, and then it had the weather frog just looking sadly out onto a burning forest.
But he's so cute.
Yeah, but after that, like. In the days following, they went back to the old formula of like the cute weather frog, just kind of like, I don't know what he was doing, but he was in the smoke, but he seemed happy about it.
For one second, the artists were able to draw whatever they wanted.
Yeah, because like Google's probably shot them. Fuck, we don't have a smoke graphic. Whip one up real quick.
And then Google shot them the next day and replaced it.
What was it? So this is a running theme for the second half of this article, is that they talk about the incremental shame and guilt that happens when you make online purchases now. You like rally against consumerism, but you still have to buy shit here and there. And then every time you're like, oh, I shouldn't, but it's a relief to me. And then people feel like they don't have any power, and this can be accompanied by guilt. I wrote into this, this is just psychopolitics. Everyone has to read that book. You can no longer blame it as a systemic issue. It is you. You exist in the marketplace, and because the marketplace totally works, you're the one who's at fault. You need to be rallying, boycotting harder, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't get angry under a repressive apparatus. Just feel guilty or burnt out in an overly positive repressive apparatus.
Yeah.
And yeah, she talks about like how therapists need more training to fight climate grief and climate anxiety, and I thought that kind of missed the point a little bit, because they're right to feel that way. The way to solve this is to go after climate change, and until you do that, any amount of therapy you do will just be like a temporary relief. Now, Bennett, I wanted you to bring up a little bit We were discussing a couple weeks ago how in previous generations they had like the Cold War, where the end of the world could be any second. But now that's no longer the case, but it is effectively the end of the world will be by 2100.
Yeah, so
and that inflicts a different anxiety.
This is, I guess, something that I thought of in a private discussion with Spencer and other people. I think with the people who were at our first and only live show so far. The idea of, like, there's a kind of a different psyche between millennials and Zoomers and Gen Xers and Boomers, which are, like, those four generations make up, like, what, 90% of the population? 95% of the population? Boomers boomers were raised into the a period of incredible prosperity, right? And Gen Xers were too, relative to now, but to a much lesser extent than their immediate predecessors, the Boomers. But both of them kind of had a different psyche informed by an anxiety about nuclear war that I don't think millennials and Zoomers have. Like, millennials and Zoomers hear about nuclear war and are like, that'd be kind of sick, wouldn't it? You know?
Yeah.
Because Boomers and Gen Xers, their whole lives had it drilled into their head. Nukes will fall one day, and everyone will die, and you have to hide under your desk in school when it happens, right? But that was the world could end on any one day, and the individual probability is incredibly low. Like, there's a 0.00001% chance the nukes fly today, and then the same probability event the next day and the next day and the next day. And that kind of Gen Xers and Boomers, I think, had something to look forward to, because it's conceivable that there will come a time when this won't be the case. And eventually that was, right? The Soviet Union fell, the Cold War ended, right? The ever-present threat of nuclear war didn't materialize.
And we don't think about
it. I also feel like it kind of led to a different mentality, like the we're gonna party like it's 1999 thing. Yeah. Like, if the end could be around the corner, have some fun with it, spend your money, go out, do your shit.
Yeah, and that is definitely that actually I didn't really consider that, Spencer, so thank you for bringing that up. But that could play into the Boomers' infamous profligacy, where they love spending money and leave people with leave their millennial children with nothing when they die, right? But yeah, it gave Gen Xers and Boomers couldn't not plan for the future, because sure, the world could end tomorrow, but it could also end in 1,000 years or something. So they definitely had and there was relative prosperity. So if they had a college degree, they were basically guaranteed a good job, or even if they didn't, they could still get a good union job at a high school.
I absolutely love the old.
Oh, go ahead.
I absolutely love the thing where you'll talk to old people and they're like, "Oh, you can read, you can write. I'm sure you'll have a great job."
Yeah, it's no. Right, but
the West also owned the world at the time. At the time, if the demographics, it really felt like the world was their oyster.
Yeah, well, the West still kind of owns the world, but definitely the population dynamics were different then, right? Boomers were all young people, and they were the biggest generation. Nowadays, they're still the biggest generation, but they're all ancient. Which definitely doesn't help the different mindset of millennials and Zoomers, who are raised into a period of relative unprosperity compared to their immediate predecessors. Millennials came of age into the Great Recession, and Zoomers have been coming of age into the so-called recovery era of the Great Recession, where supposedly the economy rebounded and things are running hot again or whatever, right?
But they've not been, right? With the pandemic and all. The
economy has actually been shit. You don't a university degree no longer guarantees you even a retail job. It's it's a mess out there. The economic
you ever notice how things are getting a little crazier out there?
People, prosperity is no longer guaranteed. People are anxious about entering the real world, which I think is a big factor in people delaying leaving school, either staying in it for longer or doing like grad programs, because they're like, well, I have this undergrad degree, or I'm about to get this undergrad degree. What's it going to get me? Nothing. Relative to at least what my parents had, Gen Xers or boomers, you know? They exit school with an undergrad and they can get a good job with it, whereas we can't. And then the apocalypse narrative that hangs over us is different than for boomers and Gen Xers. Boomers remember before climate change was public knowledge. Right? Gen Xers don't, I guess, but like it was never really a ever-present thing in their youth. But there's a difference where there's no longer a fear of nuclear war, even though it's arguably more likely now, because the people running America's enemies, like Russia, are more crazy than the Soviet Union.
There are no world leaders anymore that are like that. You can't guarantee don't have Alzheimer's or dementia or something like that. It seems that most of those guys up there, they're slipping away.
But even despite the fact that nuclear war is arguably more likely on an independent probability event day after day now, that wasn't really the apocalypse narrative we were raised with, right? Zoomers and millennials were raised with climate predictions, where it's like 2050 or 2070 or 2100. That is like a black wall at the end of history, after which we can't even be sure if civilization continues to exist, right? I would argue it will. I think plainly it will, but that's not what we were told growing up, right? The messaging around climate change when millennials and zoomers were coming up through the school system was far more apocalyptic than I think experts think it actually will be. And I feel like that was done partially because children don't really understand economics, right? So it's hard to explain to them, like, this will happen to the third world, because they'll be like, what's the third world, you know?
And boy, that's like a multi-year stage to get through.
It's so they were raised with a much more black and white image of climate catastrophe as like an all-consuming end, like a wall at the end of history, like the real end of history, not the Fukuyama garbage, right? like an end of
the Fukuyama Kino.
Less an end of history and more of an end of literacy, I guess, is the idea here.
Nice.
One of my favorite things about Fukuyama is that he's like widely disregarded in that theory, and he disregarded that theory himself, yet everyone still brings it up all the time because it's just awesome.
It is a very funny. It's like the Titanic of neoliberalism.
The one thing that's interesting is how we looked at climate change over the years. I mean, back in the 90s and 80s, when not climate change, but global warming, it was starting to be talked about, was this very strong belief that, hey, we can fix this. You know, we can reduce, recycle.
What's funny was the Republicans actually used to be big into conservation. George H.W. Bush basically launched the modern conservation program in the U.S.
EPA was Nixon. The Ottawa Treaty or Montreal Accords, whatever the one which saved the ozone levels in the sky was by Mulrooney. Like, it was the conservative thing to do, was to protect the environment. Elizabeth May came from the Mulrooney government, right?
I think what fucked it up, though, was that they realized there's no market solution, and because they are first and foremost servants of the market, they switched sides completely. And
that changed in the 90s, right? Until the 90s, it was just reduce, reuse, recycle. We can save the environment. All we got to do is just remember to protect ourselves on an individual level. But then the messaging started to change as the world still kept getting warmer and warmer, regardless of these programs. And in the early 2000s, mid 2000s is when you got your apocalyptic pieces.
So I think boomers and Gen X, they knew the apocalypse could happen any day, but there was, like, if it didn't, you had to plan for the future. Like, you had to work towards something. And I think that kind of engendered in them sort of a spirit of, like, being company men, hard workers at work, like putting all their life into labor or whatever. Even if it was like, you know, we can get into the Keynesian button pressing factory idea in a different episode, but for millennials and Zoomers, though, there's a general, like, pattern, I think, where boomers and Gen Xers see us as kind of lazy or lethargic, especially in the workplace. And I feel like a part of that is the psychology of why should I bother planning for a 40-year career if in 20 years the world will end, you know?
Yeah.
This like difference between like the world could end any day and the world will end at this day and time in the future is very I think much more psychologically damaging.
I know for sure that when I work, everyone's like, "Oh, start saving up and like put money away in a savings account," and I'm like, if to make it through climate change, there's either going to need to be a substantial overhaul of the entire system, or climate change is just gonna wreck shit.
Yeah.
So I know that like no one I know is saving for retirement. Maybe a couple people are that haven't told me, but like almost no one is, because there's no point to it. And like your investment will always grow less than the investment of capitalists. Your share of the portion will always be shrinking. There's no real, like, there is a point to it, but I feel like people don't have as well, like you said, the boomers lived in prosperous times. So the idea that the prosperous time will continue moving forward doesn't exist. People don't necessarily think their savings are going to grow. They think that there will be another 2008 and their savings will just get washed away. There's no confidence.
Yeah, I think today, for millennials and Zoomers, the message is like, things are bad now. Wait. If you think things are bad now, wait 20 years. It'll be much, much worse.
Yeah.
Like, I know anecdotally for me, growing up, the two things which gave me super anxiety was, one, I know a lot of other kids also have this. Someone told me that the sun's going to blow up in 4.6 billion years.
That actually did worry me as a kid. I was like, what?
That terrified me as a kid.
The sun
I was
could
freaking out about
up? What the fuck?
Honestly, like,
I saw a documentary.
I heard that.
I saw a documentary where the sun ate the earth in a little graphic.
That
scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
You know?
The sun is war-pilled. No, whenever I thought, oh, you're up again.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Whenever I thought about the sun exploding, I had this specific vision where we would be like, oh, guys, the sun's gonna blow up soon, but technology was advanced at this point, so we'd all like hop in a spaceship and fly away as we watched the sun explode. And I wasn't scared by that. I just thought that would be like a cool moment to live through, and I guess I was slightly saddened that I probably wasn't going to live through that.
Yeah, that was a realization which hit me eventually, which was even more sad. But the second thing which scared the hell out of me was I used to read a lot of geology and geography textbooks. I was just obsessed with those as a kid.
Yeah.
And I got one book about the world's ecosystems, and on the last page it said that the world only has 52 years left as of the writing of this book before climate change will be irreversible.
That's awesome.
And I did the math, and that was like 2052.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I'm going to be alive at that point.
Yeah, and I think I told you as well one day where we were talking, and I just said, like, entire countries are just going to be rendered completely uninhabitable by 2050. When that happens, there will be like refugee crises everywhere, and if we thought they were bad now, like, just wait until people have literally nothing to lose. The world is going to plunge into war and chaos. Yeah. And then all of that. And I think that you remembered that moment in your head and were just like, damn, this is crippling.
It's like in a movie, right? It's just in this background you see these happening.
It's very, I guess, Mark Fisher was right. Children of Men is a very prophetic movie.
What is it?
Children of Men is a movie where humans, like, I think it's like a disease or something, basically spontaneously lose the ability to reproduce. So there are no new children born, and the plot of the movie is one new child is born, and like the main character has to like protect the kid and the mom. But the movie is more famous for like the world that it takes place in, I guess. And Mark Fisher loves that movie. There's like a whole chapter on it in Capitalist Realism, where it presents like a very realistic picture of like a 21st century like capitalist apocalypse, I guess, where things are like slowly deteriorating, but like there's still like Starbucks and coffee shops that the character like walks through that look completely normal, but then there's like migrant cages out in the street, you know?
Yeah. Right, well, let me polish up this article, because we've been on it for a minute now.
Yeah.
There's one point she says nature can help a lot, and I was like, but we already established that like you can't go in the nature because of the fires, and that's part of the dread. Yeah. So while nature sure can help, and being in nature is great, it also doesn't like cure the issue, because whenever you go into nature, you immediately have to return to the non-nature. She says, like, appreciate what we still have, and I just wrote, what if positivity is the affliction? Like, what if we're doing the psychopolitics, constant positive reinforcement, and that creates anxiety? That may not actually help anxiety in the long run. Again, it's generally good to be grateful for what you have, but to go around and want everyone to constantly be grateful for all they shit is just, like, it doesn't solve anything.
That sentence gives me anxiety. That be grateful for what you have. Like it just implies that it's going to be gone soon.
Yeah.
So enjoy it now.
And here's my second last paragraph is another thing that can counter climate anxiety and eco grief is a sense of responsibility. We are the only ones who are going to take care of this land for others. We should be intentional and aware of how the life we live affects the land, and how the people we vote for and corporations we support affect the land. I'm not telling people what they should do, just to be aware of what they're doing in their day-to-day actions.
Oh my god.
And that shit, like, this paragraph just told me, okay, this person is so on the right path, but they gotta read some theory. Like, the corporations we support, but if we go into The Winners Take All by Anand Giridharadas, it's like, that won't change it. The corporations that we support are, at the end of the day, like, they are capital, and capital will act amorally. They won't back anything that actually affects their bottom line, because another corporation will act in a way that is less moral and doesn't affect their bottom line, and they will have cheaper goods, which a poorer population will have to do. People who we vote for, if we at least look at our neighbors to the south, who the population votes for and wants to support, doesn't actually change most decisions, and also just putting responsibility back on the individual. Every single person is their own entrepreneur and needs to make all their differences, but then when those differences inevitably don't manifest themselves, that is another cause for anxiety and burnout and just an all-around just guilt trip within itself. And I think that this is something that will make people feel more guilty. Which brings us to our last point, which was if we can mobilize these feelings and like work through this, we can replace powerlessness with action. I thought that was a good note. Actually try to do something out there, people. That's gonna be the one that we have to do. Like, we're gonna have to be in the streets actually pushing for something, and that's the goal.
Spencer, do me a favor, and for the point about just the companies doing their thing, send the quote by Rich Kruger to her.
Which read the quote again.
The quote by Rich Kruger, where it was like, energy transitions has been bad for us. For the bottom line, we must focus on oil-centric businesses.
Yeah. Also, I was thinking about messaging this person, but I might not, because, you know,
they got
no need to just... Yeah, they got shit going on. Clearly, they have a little bit of climate anxiety. I don't just want to pop in there and be like, oh, a random stranger thinks that you missed in your article.
Or no, you don't want to pop in there. Someone with climate anxiety, hit them with the oil corporation, like, we will not do anything about it. That's like that fucking Eric Andre nightmare bit.
Yeah. Quote from oil corporation, we do not care.
We do not care.
We do not care.
Especially because his name is Rich Kruger. God damn.
Well, thinking about people that don't care about making the world a better place, Trey, we have an article on the NIMBYs in the Coubs out there, don't we?
Oh, we do. My God, I feel like you like this article way. Like, I feel like you have a much more personal touch to this article than I do.
If you want, I can read it. I don't have notes on it, but like, I'm always down.
Yeah, we'll do it together.
All right. So this is an article from the Vancouver Sun, a reputable organization, called "How a Vancouver Neighborhood Fought and Defeated a Daycare," which is already Kino right off the start.
Yeah.
Fucking Christ. Okay, one man, audibly agitated, took a microphone and read a litany of deep concerns about the proposal under discussion, warning that the residential neighbor of the area hangs in the balance. My brother in Christ, people reside there. They need help with their children. But yeah, essentially what was happening was people were trying to expand their daycare. It was from like 5 to 10 kids. It was in their house, and they were just like, hey, we have more space. We can take in some more kids while you guys are busy doing your work. Daycare, honorable business. I personally don't want to deal with children, so people who do, respect to them.
Especially when you're at work, right?
Yeah, especially when you're at work, and the kids no longer able to be in the mines. You'll notice. And that's kind of causing a lot of these issues. What was it?
Yeah. So there was a house where this family ran a daycare during the day. It had 8 kids. What they wanted to do, this is fine by Vancouver bylaws. What they wanted to do is they wanted to add the second floor of their house to that daycare. So it'd be 16 kids now.
Yeah.
But for that, they had to go through a bylaw committee to ensure that they get the approvals from the city, which included a very long consultation where all their neighbors apparently showed up at the consultation.
So yeah, my favorite thing about this is one of the big concerns was about traffic. And it's like, this is just neighborhood kids. They can just, walk there.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard, and there's no traffic is going to come out of this. In fact, the fact that it sounds like they're in the burbs, just based on their existence. And it's like, you guys are the traffic. You guys are the people that have to drive everywhere to get shit done. Stop complaining about other people's traffic when you are reinforcing traffic through your decisions. Another thing
especially
about
when there was only one traffic complaint ever made, and that complaint was done to the daycare, and daycare took care of it, so it was actually 0 traffic complaints ever made to the city.
Yeah.
But they were saying, but there might be traffic in the future.
If this precedent is set, there is nothing stopping from another homeowner converting their house into a funeral home.
What?
They say funeral home first to make it scary, and then they continue to go on to motorcycle repair shop, Kino, corner store, awesome, gym, fantastic, dry cleaner, useful. Why did they just lead that with funeral home to be like, dude, they're just gonna start bringing corpses into the neighborhood?
But also, like, why would you not want those things?
Yeah.
Like, I lived in a suburb, and people loved the convenience store,
Yeah.
and the dry cleaner, and the fucking cafe, all the like local amenities. People love that shit. Why would you not want that? Unless these guys are only already existing convenience store or something, and they're like, don't want competition.
Yeah. No, convenience stores are awesome. Having more, could you imagine if there was just a motorcycle repair shop just around the corner from your place, and you could just chill and watch motorcycles get repaired?
That'd be awesome.
That would be dope. I want a motorcycle repair shop in my neighborhood.
I feel like an unspoken part of this is yes, those businesses are cool, but think about who hangs out at convenience stores. Black teenagers,
Oh no.
And
it's Jover.
Yeah, the reason they don't want a funeral home is not because they don't like morticians, is because they don't want corpses coming in. And the reason they don't want motorcycle repair shop is because they don't want motorbike people coming in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what about gym?
They don't want to be intimidated by people who look better
they don't
than
want
them.
roided out muscle heads coming in.
Yeah. He doesn't want his wife around all the gym rats. I think that's the trick here.
Listen, I think more the wife doesn't want her husband around all the gym rats.
I was gonna say.
Maybe. She stands to lose socially for a couple of years, but then I feel like there's long-term benefit there,
Now, the guy who talked about the traffic being a huge problem, this is cool. His name is Mr. Goodman, and Mr. Goodman is runs a real estate firm where he does a lot of local commentary on the importance of density within Vancouver and the desperate need to build more houses and build higher density buildings as fast as possible. However, he was very anti the daycare because of traffic.
Yeah.
That's bizarre. All around a strange story.
Well, this is my favorite.
There was also, okay, when he said, oh, nothing will stop a funeral home, but, like, they would still have to go through this whole consulting process, so they could literally stop a funeral home from happening.
Yeah.
Yep. My favorite was this one. Yeah, so one of the neighbors, Carol, I won't say her last name, but Carol, she complained about the noises made by 8 children currently enrolled there. When the kids are outside between 11 and 12 and between 4 and 5, I cannot have my windows open. I can't escape the noise currently. So she would expand this daycare, there'd be no peace.
Imagine hating the sound of laughing children.
Yeah, I think I wrote that down. I have one note, and it's a highlight of that quote and saying they literally just hate people for having fun.
Yeah. I can't imagine a more cranky... First of all, Carol, perfect name for that quote. Yeah. I could definitely see a Carol saying that shit. Second of all, bizarre take. Like, the whole point of suburbs is family homes. Like a home you would raise a family in.
And it was just between 2 hours, 11 and 12 and 4 and 5. It's not like,
Yeah, it's also like 11 and 12 and 4 and 5. Why aren't you at work, Carol? God damn.
Don't you have shit going on? Like, can you not do literally... Go for a walk, damn it. Like, just leave for a second.
Listen, you're in a suburb. You definitely own a car. Go for a nice drive, all right?
Yeah. Just...
The city was asked why they rejected the daycare, and they gave 3 responses. Lack of parking. The drop-off times being awful. Thanks, Carol.
I love how lack of parking and drop-off contradict each other.
And then the third one was strong opposition from the neighborhood. So the neighborhood did truly kill this project.
Yeah.
And we'll leave off with the last quotes of the article, which is, people just seemed so angry about it, absolutely furious that we were doing this. Like, how dare you, McCormick said. It was very disheartening to hear. I mean, they're children. It's a daycare, and we live across the street from a park. We were so flabbergasted. Like, what is everyone mad about? And you're so fucking right, man. I have no idea.
Okay, you know what this reminds me of? Is one of my all-time favorite Onion articles. 10 years of life dedicated to getting municipal pool not built. Let me link this in the group chat here.
We should do a bonus episode soon where we just go over our favorite Onion articles. I think that's a good idea.
Alright, let's move on to the Niger coup.
Oh shit. Ben, how far into this are we, by the way?
We're about an hour 10.
God damn. Alright, I'll really try to speedrun this. Guys, in advance, I was like, oh, you know what? I'll read about the coup in Niger for like an hour and a half, and I'll get like a basic understanding and cover the basics. I dipped my toes in, and like something reached out and grabbed me. There is so much going on. Like, I thought I could scratch the surface, just give a vague overview. There was a coup in Niger, give a couple details, and then be like, that's one of the things happening around the world. Not that simple. It is so not that simple that it's just terrifying.
Well, welcome to West Africa, right?
Forgive me in advance. I am going to attempt this. But essentially, Mohamed Bazoum and the Nigerian Party for Democracy and Socialism was overthrown July 26, 2023. They'd won the last 3 presidential elections democratically, the first 2 under the leader of Mahamadou Issoufou, with the last one being Mohamed Bazoum. So the US says they support Bazoum, even though he runs as a socialist, so I'm not really sure what that means for his socialism, but that's, not for today. I was already too lost in the sauce. So yeah, July 26th, the Presidential Guard detained the president, and a military junta was formed. There's ECOWAS, which was formed around. It's like a group of countries formed around Niger, and that's just a group of Western Africa countries. And they've suspended Niger, closed their borders, put sanctions in place, and Nigeria cut power, which has caused blackouts. So ECOWAS has said that if power doesn't go back to the president, they may use military force. This is where shit gets interesting. The new leaders in Niger say they're just defending the homeland, yada yada, that's normal. And the Niger coup leaders are saying that ECOWAS invading would count as an act of war against themselves, and they would be forced to defend Niger against their own army.
What the?
Are you sure? What?
Or no, that's neighboring coup leaders have said that.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
their
Neighboring
way. Yeah. So that's like just wild right off the start. So now there's two different kind of allied groups forming, and inside both of those allied groups, there are other groups starting to form. It's starting to become like the finger guns pointing around everywhere. So ECOWAS, you'll notice that they did not invade neighboring countries when they recently had coups. Sanctions were generally used, but they didn't really do much, so they're trying to show commitment to democracy this time, and show that they have, and I'll quote, both bark and bite. So Nigeria shares a border with Niger, but they also have insurance with IS, Boko Haram, and Al-Qaeda. And ECOWAS has done military intervention in some smaller areas like Gambia, but there was no real resistance. So they've had success, but it doesn't mean much. Niger is huge and has allies in Mali and Burkina Faso.
Yep.
Which are both struggling with insurgencies in their own country, so help is not guaranteed. Nigeria has the strongest and best military, but it also seems the most invented. Okay, there's a typo somewhere in here. And also seems to have neighbors that are willing to commit troops, but like we just said, they are also like constantly facing insurgencies. Western outside powers seem to be against the coup and have troops nearby to fight insurgents, but aren't guaranteed to get any actual assistance. Russia supports the coup, but also hasn't guaranteed any help. Full conflict is a possibility, but it could also just be that everyone is bluffing. So there's a trillion things happening, but no guarantee that anything is actually happening.
This sounds like a lot. This kind of shit happens in post-colonial Africa. Shit like this is always going down. Like, I hate to say it, as much as I love France, get the fuck out of Africa, man. It's like so France's fault for being so involved in West Africa and not just letting it go. You know?
Yeah.
You're not an empire anymore. Go home.
Well, I was reading, right? Like, the French have 1,000 or so troops in the area ready for against insurgents. I know that the Wagner group is supporting the coup, apparently. And so they're involved as well. But I think the big thing is Niger is just, like, Niger and Mali, which is the other big one, which had the coup, and then Burkina Faso, they all just really hate France. It seems to be, like, a really, really anti-French resistance going on right now. Like, I saw this morning that they recently removed French as the official language for Niger and replaced with 13 local small languages.
That's pretty cool.
Which is wild. Like, they're just really trying to get rid of French influence, it looks like.
Don't we have a call to do similar in Canada too?
I don't see why we would. Consider the
maybe
fact
not remove French, but rather just add a bunch of smaller languages for Indigenous.
I mean, that would be a symbolic gesture. The difference is that, like, people in Niger actually speak these languages widely.
Yeah.
But they speak like 20 different languages, and French is the language they use to communicate between regions. So it's more like English in India than English in Canada, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, like India, I believe, has something like 26 official languages or something like that. Like, a very high number of official languages. But to be honest, the main two languages which matter are Hindi for most things, and then English for commerce, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But that's because there are languages which actually transcend. In Niger, it's a bit different, where they have French, which everyone speaks, and then each of the local languages that no one else speaks except for that area.
Yeah.
It's they're kind of like they're so fed up with France that they're hamstringing themselves in order to reduce French influence.
Which is kind of base, to be honest.
Like, we won't get into it in detail, but basically, like, France still kind of controls their former colonies. Like, they have says over government expenditure and what the government does and, like, who can get elected and stuff. And a lot of these countries still pay tribute, basically, to France in return for independence. It's a crazy situation there.
I know the French president's constantly in West Africa, so I'm assuming that's why, right?
Yeah.
So the last thing I'll kind of say about this is I'm still going into more articles, and my kind of pet project that I have had so far is reading The Intercept, specifically Nick Turse, who is going on about how America has trained a bunch of the new higher up officials in Niger who did the coup, and he's trained them and they've been trained in like suppressing civilians and all of that, which is just classic America shit.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's to say that like, oh, America is directly behind the coup, but I think it is kind of saying, can America please just fuck off? Like, if they could do that, that would be nice, because they keep on trying to spread like Western liberal ideology, and what they've managed to find so far isn't that. Like, they train people in, like, general liberal ideology and combat, but somehow when the soldiers come out the other side, they hate civilians even more, care less about their rights, but are way better in combat. So they can just do more damage. So, yeah, I think, like...
But I think it's honestly what's going on here is, like, the U.S. probably needed Niger for some fucked up empire building shit in Africa. Like, they needed Niger to bully Nigeria for oil fields or whatever. And then they trained like local guys, like local officers, just because they thought like, we need to get these guys like integrated into the NATO hierarchy if we ever need to invade this place.
This might be useful later for us.
Not realizing that like they're just training the guys with like just the most advanced counter insurgency techniques. Like just equipping these guys with every tool like strategically they need to take over the country whenever they want, you know?
Yeah.
Like they did the same shit to the Taliban against the Soviet Union. I'm sure they'll do the same thing to another third world country soon.
Oh man, this is such a great
they're just
quote.
So involved with everyone everywhere that it inevitably backfires all the time.
Yeah.
This is such a fantastic quote. So, according to the BBC, since 1990, 78% of the 27 coups that have happened in sub-Saharan Africa have happened in former French colonies. So,
well,
it's just basically France.
One of the reasons for that is because whenever a French colony elects a government that's like, we are going to stop sending tribute to France, France just overthrows the government.
Yeah. It looks like the insurgencies are used as an excuse by the French to keep their forces in the area, just, help out, quote unquote.
Yeah, it's messed up. It truly is messed up.
Yeah. So I know that like the defense leader, I think it was trained in America, so that's not necessarily a good optics. And it seems that America is trying to do stuff over there, but given the place's already like lack of stability, it seems that their military first approach to helping out just isn't making the intended goals.
Yeah.
And you guys are spoiled this time because we're actually getting another international news. From Bennett over there.
Yeah. So, as per usual, interesting things are happening in Latin America. Are you gentlemen familiar with the pink tide?
Yes.
The pink.
But the audience might not.
Yeah, Spencer, are you?
It's totally for the audience, bro. Say that shit for the audience.
Okay, so the pink tide refers to a few events in Latin American history where mostly South America has elected waves of democratic socialists. Like, not social democrats like the NDP, like Marxists who want to achieve power democratically, like Salvador Allende. Right? This has like happened before with like waves of these guys getting elected. So Evo Morales and like this Lula, that's like a pink tide, but also like there's been stuff like this in the past. And
Chavez,
Ecuador's last pink tide entry was a guy called Corias, who was like he was a democratic socialist, but also like socially conservative. Like he did not vibe with the indigenous people. Let's just put it that way. And he was like very homophobic and openly Catholic, but also on the other hand, big into nationalizing stuff, big into worker power, big into socialism. Anyways, he was president until 2017. He was succeeded by Guillermo Lasso. No, not Guillermo Lasso. Guillermo Lasso's immediate predecessor. But basically when he left, Ecuador elected like just a conservative, like a center-right guy. The most recent center-right guy, Guillermo Lasso, was caught doing all kinds of shit. Like there's a lot of stuff that he got caught doing, basically. The general gist of it was corruption and open involvement with like the cartels.
Classic.
Anyways, he was getting impeached by Ecuador's parliament, which is a proportional representation parliament, so it's like a crazy unstable parliament as per usual with PR systems. He was getting impeached, but he decided to invoke an obscure constitutional clause, instantly dissolving parliament. So he dissolved parliament in the middle of the impeachment process. He still got removed, I think, by the Supreme Court of Ecuador anyways, so they have to have a new presidential election. All right? So the presidential election is between like a billion parties because it's Latin America and it's like a two-step election, like France. So there's like 10 different people running. But the current frontrunner is Corias, like his protege, Luisa Gonzalez. All right, she's like a democratic socialist, big far left figure there. She's leading by a wide margin. The second place guy is a guy called Topic, Jan Topic, who's very right wing, like big libertarian type guy. Also was a mercenary for a while.
Holy moly!
So he was in the French Foreign Legion. He was in various mercenary groups. He's fought in Africa, Syria, and in the Ukraine war, but it's not clear which side he fought on.
Holy moly. This guy has more red flags than any leader I've heard of in the last however long.
Anyways, he's now he's the president of Telconet, which is like a huge company in Ecuador that also he got busted for cartel money laundering. So he's like the cartel candidate.
Awesome.
And Gonzalez
so he's gonna start off strong.
Yeah, so he's in second. It's like
yeah,
everyone else is like a distant, except for a guy called Zurita, who is on the ticket as of like last week because his predecessor Villavicencio was assassinated. And for reference, Villavicencio is not like a big like radical. He's just like a center right guy. Like it's like if someone assassinated like Aaron O'Toole.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's impressive.
So
how the fuck they get assassinated?
I don't remember who was credited with the assassination, but
so it was sick. It was a group called Los Labos, which means like the wolves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know too much. All I know is that there were 6 hitmen who were hired, and all 6 hitmen were actually charged for a different thing and were supposed to be arrested. And 2 hours before Villavicencio got assassinated, the police put a report saying, "Please arrest these guys if you see them." And then they assassinated the guy. So
yeah. Anyways, he got assassinated. Tragically, Zurita, his successor, did not get a big poll bump. He actually went down 4 points. But anyways, it looks like it's getting actually kind of closer in recent polling, but it looks like the socialists, like the far left parties, are going to win the first round and probably win the second round. But
Well, they're going through a pink tide moment right now, right? Latin
Yeah.
America, like Lula just got elected.
Evo just got back in. Yeah.
Chile just went socialist as well.
Yeah. So we're seeing another pink tide coming in. So good tidings for Luisa Gonzalez, and I wish her the best. Really, I think she seems fine.
Do we know when the election is?
It's tomorrow.
Oh, so we'll know. We'll know by the next episode.
It's a 2-tier election. The first round is tomorrow, and I don't remember when the next round is. If she's not going to win over 50% of the vote, because there's like 20 people running, but if she did, she would immediately win. But anyways, there's like riots in Ecuador right now, a lot of violence. The cartels aren't happy their guy is losing, it seems. It's chaos down there. There's been like a left-wing schism because Luisa Gonzalez is a Korean. She is like a disciple of Correas, and the indigenous left is like not chill with it. Right?
No, leftist infighting. No way.
Well, in their defense, he was kind of mean. He was pretty mean to them.
That sounds kind of reasonable, actually.
Yeah. Okay. But I imagine if the indigenous party is going to lose the first round, I assume most of their people will flip to Gonzalez, so it's not that huge a deal, but like, classic left-wing stuff. Now it's a crazy situation. It's hard to untangle what's going on down there, but I do have a choice quote. When the president dissolved parliament to prevent himself from being impeached, all the other Latin American countries from like Mexico to Bolivia were like, this is not okay, you can't do this, this is like a contravention of democracy to do this, you're like exploiting the Constitution. The United States had this to say: we support the democratic institutions in Ecuador.
That's awesome. I'm convinced that whenever America comments on all this stuff, they just like, they hear, oh, something's going on in Ecuador, what should we say? We like the democracy.
Yeah.
And they just like chuck shit out there. The same with like the coup. I have a little thing here where it was just like America has just said like nothing, essentially. They've said like, oh, there's an attempted coup or something. And they just kind of have not said any more.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I wish all the best to Gonzalez. Hopefully she keeps her head, literally, I guess. It's looking pretty spicy down there. But that's all I've got on the Ecuador situation. Any other thoughts?
I mean, I guess we'll find out, right?
We'll find out tomorrow,
what happens.
Yeah, and honestly, if there's another like pink tide happening, I'm kind of in for it. This is exciting stuff.
Yeah, but I think
Chile?
The pink tides are cool, I guess, but like ever since Pinochet harshed the vibe, I feel like those pink tides have been kind of had like a ceiling where they can't go past without just dying, like literally being killed.
Well, Chavez did quite a bit, and I know his successor Maduro is going through a rough time right now.
Yeah.
Morales did all right. Morales is still doing all right, as far as I know.
Morales got like exiled.
Oh, did he?
No, he's back. I mean, like, him coming back was after coming out of exile, and like the far right tried to overthrow the government. I don't know if you remember the Bolivia coup.
Oh, I do. I do remember the Bolivia coup.
Yeah,
I know Chile is good. Chile is looking good right now, so I'm hoping Chile continues looking good.
Chile doesn't have the best track record with maintaining pink government.
Generally though, it seems kind of that globally the whole like socialist stuff kind of comes in waves.
Yeah.
And it always like slowly starts to work its way up, and then it gets repressed somehow, and then it starts to slowly work, like it stays underwater for a little bit and then slowly starts to form and work its way up, and then it gets repressed again. But like I have a feeling that as things continue, similar to how market crashes are always worse than the previous market crash, like the bottom is always lower than the previous one, it would seem to me that like eventually, if there's going to be a critical number of support that will happen for at least social democracy or democratic socialism, whatever, I think that like one of these waves is eventually just going to be big enough that it will kind of start to really dominate and be like you can't. unrepressible, irrepressible.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, I'm hoping it's this one. I'll keep I'll keep giving positive vibrations to it.
Yeah,
you know?
we'll manifesting we're manifesting Gonzalez's victory in the Ecuador election. Go off, Queen. That's our take.
We'll see. Well, maybe she'll win. She'll watch this show, and then she'll listen to this podcast, and then think, you know what, they're right, and then win the election.
Yeah. Or maybe Honestly, if we just like put Ecuador in the description of this episode, I'm sure like thousands of Ecuadorians will somehow see the video.
We should try this. We gotta start spamming tags like that.
Yeah.
You know what you gotta do, Ben? You gotta rename this one to a Fuego, Fuego, Fuego. You know,
that's a great title. All right. Well, that's all we have this week. See you, folks. Bye.